Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
Let's go! It's a free agent preview edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Welcome into a Friday, June 30th edition. As always, Daily Faceoff Live brought to you by Betano. The game starts now at betano.ca, Canada's sports betting leader. 19 plus, please play responsibly. He's former NHL netminder, current Daily Faceoff analyst, Mike McKenna. Mike, how you doing?
Man, I'm good. I think we need an oxygen, though, to get us going after everything that's happening right now. It's all happening, dude. There's so much going on right now. Let's get going, man.
Yeah, let's dive in. Let's throw 2 minutes and 30 seconds up on that clock, and let's start with the buyouts, because today was the day. The buyout window in the NHL, the first buyout window at least, closes at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And unconditional waivers today did not disappoint, because there was at least one very surprising name in Matt Duchene. The Nashville Predators have made the decision to buy out the final 3 seasons of Duchene's deal with an $8 million AAV, meaning he will be on the Nashville Predators books for each of the next 6 seasons, including a couple really tough cap hits at $5.5 and $6.5 million in the middle of that buyout. He joins Blake Wheeler from the Winnipeg Jets. No surprise there. Kyler Yamamoto, who was bought out by the Detroit Red Wings 1 day after they acquired him, as well as Mike Riley of the Boston Bruins. Again, no surprise, Riley and Yamamoto, 2 of the key buyout candidates that we had been reporting on for each of the last number of weeks. But Mike, it's Duchene that really caught a lot of people off guard on Friday.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this really closely, it's Barry Trotz coming in and saying, I'm going to remake this Nashville Predators team in the way that I want it to be. Ryan Johansson out the door, Matt Duchene out the door, inconsistent performers. Have they been able to play with the tenacity that's required under a Barry Trotz over the long haul? No, they haven't. So they're willing to eat a big cap, and this is going to open up a lot of space. They got cap room to play with a little bit, even though they're going to have to deal with this Duchene's contract on the books. Like, this gives Trotz a bit of flexibility, and it's going to give him a chance to remake it the way he wants. We all expected Wheeler. Yamamoto, not a big surprise, but this is really a big swing from an organization. We haven't seen a lot of this lately from Frank in Nashville, and honestly, I can't say I'm surprised at all. I always looked at that deal with Duchene and I went, oh, it's a lot of money. I don't know. And here we go, 3 years left, and it is bought out. Now he's going to be a free agent.
Yeah, the key buzzword for the Nashville Predators under Barry Trotz, culture. He wants really good people in that organization, and not to cast aspersions on Matt Duchene or Ryan Johansson. It felt like with both of those players, in addition to Yaroslav Askarov, depending on who you ask around the league, all 3 of those guys had still some growing up to do that perhaps the Nashville Predators said, you know what, no more time for that. This is the NHL. Some of you guys have been in it for a while.
Yeah.
Got to be better than what you've been.
Maturity is the word, I think, really. I mean, geez, you could see those firsthand sometimes. So I'm curious with Askarov. That's still a major prospect for them, a number 11th overall pick for the Nashville Predators. If he's being dangled, you can tell that Barry Trotz is really serious about creating that right culture.
Yeah, and look, here's the question now is, where would Matt Duchene land? I think maybe it was a little bit easier for Ryan Johansson to move at $8 million because you know that he only had 2 seasons left. When it's 3 for Duchene, that presented maybe an obstacle that the Preds couldn't overcome. And at some point, too, you back yourself into a corner retaining salary once so many different players. Clearly, if he hits the buyout window that he was available the last number of days and weeks from the Preds, would you sign Matt Duchene, and where would he slot on the free agent list? Because we'll get to that in a second. Blake Wheeler is inside the top 10 after his buyout. I think on a short-term, short money deal, Blake Wheeler still got lots of game left to maybe help a team on the right side get over the top.
Yeah, Duchene, I don't know, man. It makes me nervous. Even at a low dollar figure, I don't know if you're going to get the effort on a consistent basis that's necessary to make it sing. But you do wonder now about Nashville. Hey, they got to backfill that center ice position. So now that opens up their lexicon of what Trotz may do. So this just threw a wrench into everything.
Yeah, Matt Duchene still coming off of a 22-goal, 56-point season last year. 2 seasons ago, 43 and 86. So I have to imagine that somewhere, some team is now salivating with little cap space saying, hey, come here for 1 year, play on a contender, and then we'll both use each other. You can cash in with points, hit the market, and try and hit it bigger next summer when the cap goes up in a big way. So let's talk about that free agent class. Free agency opens at 12 noon Eastern on Saturday, July 1st. Tomorrow, we will have a 2-hour special on Daily Faceoff Live. You'll be there, as well as Tyler Remchuk steering the ship. Jay Rosehill will be there. Matt Larkin, Nick Alberga, Stephen Ellis, the whole crew will be in tow for the Daily Faceoff Live free agent special. So check that out on our YouTube stream. If you haven't, we have a boatload of fun, and I'll be there breaking signings as well. But take a look, Mike, at the new top 10 that will have to be revamped now after some of these buyouts. Dmitry Orlov still holds down the number 1 spot. Tyler Bertuzzi, after GM Don Sweeney in Boston acknowledged on Thursday that the Bruins are unlikely to sign any of their pending unrestricted free agents. That includes guys much further down the list, like a Thomas Nosek, for instance, that is expected to hit the market on Saturday. Alex Killorn, really interesting piece from the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're still working today to try and re-sign him. JT Comfort, they won't be able to make the money work in Colorado. He will be hitting the market. And as we slide toward the bottom half of the top 10, Blake Wheeler slotting in at that number 8 spot. You see Vladimir Tarasenko jump into the top 10 by virtue of some of the other guys that have gone off the board. Mike, when you look at this top 10, who intrigues you and excites you the most?
Well, Orlov's pretty easy because he's a number 1 defenseman available in goalies. We love defensemen, but I think he'd be phenomenal in Buffalo, man. Like, you look at a team that's got Dahlin and Power that needs somebody that can play the right side with them, and they've got cap space to do it. He would change the dynamic of that entire club. They need a player like him. And even with a Ryan Graves, I'm going to stick on this D theme here. Where's he going to head to? Well, for me with Graves, like, he's now number 2 probably on the list of defensemen, and he can skate. And that's a big, big plus for any D that's out there. I'm not sure where he's going to head to, but I think that a team, again, like a Minnesota could really use someone like him because they're going to lose Dumba. They tried with Klingberg. I know they don't have a lot of cap space, but I think they need to revamp that line, even if they have to move out of Merrill or somebody else. So those are the 2 that I've really eyed. And even Tarasenko. Frank, where's he going to land? Like, this is kind of a wild card contract, I believe, because he's made a lot of money. Maybe he just wants 2 years. Maybe he gets 5 or 6 mil. But boy, he'd look great on a dumpster dive contract like Carolina, namely a team that needs scoring desperately, even on the right side power play. He'd look really good being fed pucks from Sebastian Aho.
It's funny. There's been very little chatter about Vladimir Tarasenko in the marketplace. I know Carolina was interested previously. I don't know that I see them spending on a big ticket item like a Tarasenko, even though they could
that's why it'd have to be a discount.
Use a finisher, but they also have the space potentially available from Max Pacioretty. That deal comes off the books. By the way, Pacioretty, I do think the Canes are making a last-ditch effort to sign him as well, coming off of the second ruptured Achilles. They also are closing in on re-signing Jesper Fast. Blake Wheeler, I have a prediction. It's not really a bold one, but I think it's an intriguing fit. I talked to Dallas Stars GM Jim Nill the other day, and he was saying after the draft that they are working on trying to land a winger. They don't have much cap space. I just feel like that's the perfect team for Wheeler to step into. In depth, pressure is off a little bit in a spot where you can, play just be a guy. You don't have to be the captain. You don't have to be the focal point of the organization. Just come in on a short-term, short money deal and produce on a team that went to the Western Conference Final again.
It's as Jim Nill of a contract as you could ever imagine, right? Take table scraps in a place that everybody wants to play. Look at Pavelski. He's been phenomenal there. And it would make sense with Wheeler, but I could also see him as also somebody like Carolina tries to resuscitate as well. I think they're going to be pretty much in the mix here. They need scoring. And I think any of those players could fill it.
Okay, so we've talked about this being the worst free agent class that we can remember. And in saying that, it's not to disparage anyone in the top 10, but I'm not really all that intrigued with the top 10 this year. Where I'm most fascinated with this class, Mike, is way further down the list, somewhere between 25 and 50, because with the 4th straight year of a flat salary cap and so many teams being up against it, especially the contenders, you're going to need to find value somewhere. And this is actually the year to do it. So when you look at this top 50, which will be coming out on dailyfaceoff.com in a matter of hours, where would you be looking? What guy would you hone in on to try and sign?
Well, the question is, who's your favorite? And I think my favorite's going to be any depth that you can find at center ice, because it makes a difference. Look at the Vegas Golden Knights. They just won with Nick Waz, their fourth line center, who's better than that slot for a lot of teams.
Okay, so give me your guy.
Give me Nick Bjugstad. Or give me Tomas Nosek. You take either of those two, and I'd be happy. But Bjugstad, I love that he resuscitated his career in Arizona last season. Had 17 goals, and then he went to Edmonton and played pretty well there as well. What I like, though, is that he's a penalty killer that can eat minutes in your top four on the kill. He was one of only 2+ players for the Arizona Coyotes last year, and I think he's very much slotted into being now a fourth-line center, or it could bump up to third if you need to. But I think he's the value contract that you can get in that role. It's going to pay big dividends of probably $2 million or so. Nosek is very much like that as well. To me, these are the cogs of teams that are sometimes forgotten. The depth center that can drive their teammates, but also play an even more elevated role on a penalty kill. So give me Bjugstad or Nosek, Frank. Who's your pick?
So Bjugstad's interesting. I think the Oilers have actually offered him a 1-year, $1 million deal to stay. He kind of rejuvenated his career this past year, starting in Arizona, getting traded to Edmonton at the deadline. And he was a guy that was on the ropes a bit. Will he leave some money on the table to go to a contending team is the question, because you could probably get 2 or 2.5 somewhere else with the goals that he scored. I'm going to give you a couple guys. I'm going to say Connor Clifton. Actually, 2 guys coming out of Boston, Connor Clifton and Garnet Hathaway. Love what Hathaway can do in your bottom 6. Versatile, can touch a lot of different areas. Also, Clifton, he's a physical guy. He's got an edge. He's at times people don't love his risk profile, but people really like having him around and in the room. So I think that's another interesting fit as well. I'm going to give you Ryan Donato from the Seattle Kraken, coming off a 14-goal year. I think he's another guy that has some versatility. And how about this? No one's really talked about him much, and he's had some struggles ending his time in Montreal. But Jonathan Drouin, 1 year, $1 million deal somewhere. What about the Colorado Avalanche? Rejuvenating his career, maybe rekindling some magic from his junior days with a certain teammate in Denver. What do you think?
You think so? You think maybe Mr. McKinnon could help him a little bit?
I think he could help anyone. I mean, for $1 million, like I would take the chance.
Yeah, for $1 million, I'd do that for sure. I also like Connor Sheary, 30, 40-point guy. He'd be good too. But I like that Duran line of thought. That's creative, Frank.
Sheary, he's good. Someone's going to pay him somewhere. I don't know what he is. I'm not like, what is he good at? Give me his skill set. I know that he puts up points, but like if you were to give him an archetype, I don't know where you'd put him.
That's why I think he's valuable. He's a little bit of everything.
So a Group 6 free agent also expected to hit the market, Matthew Phillips from the Calgary Flames. I think the Flames are going to take one last run at him today to try and re-sign him. A lot of that going on. We'll talk about the free agent goalie market in a second and the goalie market at large. But teams like Carolina, they don't have anyone in net except for Kochetkov. What happens with Freddie Anderson? Will he hit the market? Luke Shen from the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's a lot going on today for teams. They've got a lot of business to take care of, Mike. The draft just ended on Thursday, a 2-day turnaround to free agency on Saturday. It's usually a week to 10 days. So teams' heads are spinning as well as ours. I wanted to get to this and touch on it. I think it's an important story. In any other day, at any other time of the year, this would have been our first topic. It's something that we spent a lot of time delving into. But the women's hockey leagues are basically, there's a takeover. The PHF has been purchased by the PWHPA, the Mark Walter Group, who he's the primary and majority owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Billie Jean King Group. They also purchased the PHF. Some sad news for players today because contracts will be voided from some of those teams. Not all the teams will survive. But I think, Mike, once you get past the sort of awkwardness of this and the disappointment that may exist for some PHF players who won't be able to continue their playing career in the short term, this is actually the best move for women's hockey, being united under one banner where the best women's hockey players on the planet can play and face off against each other without competing against another league.
Gives my daughters an awful lot of hope, Frank. And I think that's important here because this is what needed to happen. And the NHL wasn't going to pick a side either. And let's be real about this. This league needs support from the NHL, whether it's just through partnerships, whether it's through actual funding in any way, it needs it. So this is a good thing in that way. But now you've got probably, let's say, the 6 best teams in the world are going to be out there for women's hockey. Yes, there's going to be jobs lost because you don't have the 2 competing leagues. But if you're going to have the best product on the ice, isn't that what you need? I think that's the case. So to me, the hard part, yeah, you've got some big contracts that have now been voided that were signed with the PHF, but the PHF wasn't a professionally run organization in the first place from the players I've talked to.
It's gotten so much better too. They've made some strides, but not
they've gotten better, but all I heard was sketchy contracts. They weren't transparent. Like, it was a mess, man. And so you have to hope that this helps out a lot of the players. Tough part was they weren't even consulted on it, right? It just happened. So the short story is this is good. This needed to happen. Long story, it's messy, but anytime a league is founded and you're trying to get something off the ground, a lot of times that's how it happens. I like that Billie Jean King is involved in this as well. It gives it some clout.
Yeah. Finally united under one banner. As mentioned, the PHF new PWHPA league, yet to be named, will begin play in January 2024, as both leagues announced jointly earlier this morning. Mike, let's get to some goalie talk with this week's edition of the Blue Paint. Let's dive in and play goaltending matchmaker. Mike, you hear that music? That's the annual game of goaltending musical chairs being played, and you're going to see a lot of guys try and take some seats between now and Saturday when free agency opens at 12 noon Eastern. So we've talked a bit about the unrestricted free agent goaltenders that are on the market, and there's no shortage of them, but only a few teams are interested in a true number one. The Kings, Pens, and Sens top that list. Play matchmaker and tell me who makes sense for those teams. Put one goalie in one city. Ready, set, go.
You got it. And again, this is not involving trades, purely UFAs. I think the LA Kings, when it comes down to it, they want somebody who's stable. And Freddie Anderson really hits the mark for them at 33 years old. I don't think he's going to be a long-term contract. I would be surprised if they did that. I'd like Tristan Jarry there. I'd like if the Kings traded, but I think Freddie Anderson makes the most sense for that club. Steady, reliable. The Pittsburgh Penguins, if they can't make a trade for somebody, look at Jonas Korpisalo. He played with Columbus for a long time. They're familiar with him. He had a great season last year before getting dealt to the LA Kings. I think Korpisalo would be a major upgrade at a value contract. Kyle Dubas likes those. He's going to need that with that salary cap structure. And then the Ottawa Senators. Hard part, now you're getting down to not having many number ones available. Who's the youngest number one with the most upside to me? That's Tristan Jarry. I don't think Sens fans are going to be happy to get another ex-Pens goalie after the Matt Murray debacle previously, but
an ex-Pens goalie also with an injury history.
But every goalie has an injury history. Look at the top 3. Anderson, Korpisalo, the whole next batch.
Antti Ranta further down the list. Yeah, everyone's got one.
They've all got it. The best UFA available in my eyes that's played the best hockey is Tristan Jarry, followed closely by Freddie Anderson.
Okay. Interesting. I've heard some rumblings in the last few days, Mike, that the Pittsburgh Penguins under Kyle Dubas might actually have a wholesale goalie change. Not only is Tristan Jarry expected to hit the market, but there's a chance that Casey DeSmith is playing elsewhere next season as well. And the Pens could bring in 2 new goalies. I've heard lots of rumblings that the Penguins are interested in Kaapo Kähkönen from the San Jose Sharks. It's kind of a surprising name. Didn't really expect to see him be talked about much. Where's he at technically?
Not great. They should be asking about Dan Vladar in Calgary, but they probably have to give up a lot to get him because I think there's a lot of teams that would like him, Frank.
Yeah, I think the Flames are probably sitting in a pretty decent spot with the guys that they have. Wouldn't be surprised to see Vladar on the move, and also, you know, depending on what happens with Matt Murray and if the Leafs are able to move him, I wouldn't be shocked to see Vladar land in Toronto. The only problem is they don't really have the assets to pull it off, the pick-wise. But Vladar to be reunited with Brad Treliving think he's a pretty big believer in him, giving him that extension to begin with. So a lot of people think Vladar can be a future number one. So let's talk tandems. We were talking teams that needed true number ones. New Jersey needs someone to pair with Vitek Vanacek. Carolina needs someone with Pyotr Kochetkov. What happens with those two goalies if they have to go the UFA route on July 1?
That's the big question, right? Like, I think the Carolina, for me, I thought Aiden Hill would have been a great fit there with Kochetkov, but it looks like Hill's going to be going back to the Golden Knights on a deal. So
I bet you the Canes keep Anderson.
You think Anderson? See, I think Ransom might be the one because Kochetkov's going to have room to grow. I think it could be either of the two, though, Frank. You got an inside track on Anderson? Because to me,
I think they liked Anderson. They just hate the inconsistency of Anderson, meaning injury-wise. But when he's been in net, he's been great.
Yeah, he's been solid, I would say. I mean, he's fine. Like, he's an above average NHL goalie. So, and that's because he plays for that team. So I think Anderson's going to get more money elsewhere. That's my pick. I think LA might be able to outspend it a little bit, or anybody else out there is going to offer Anderson because he's such a high regarded player at this point. And that's where I think Rancia fits in the mix. He could easily go back there. Yes, he's hurt a lot as well, but I think Kochetkov is truly the guy that's going to take over in Carolina. And I think Jersey, just as much as they'd probably like to get a Hellebuck or somebody big on the trade market, it doesn't, to me, seem likely at this stage in terms of the contract structure, although I could be totally wrong. So what about a Semyon Varlamov? You know, he likes the New York area. He's played for the Islanders. I mean, the Devils are just right down the road. I don't know if the Isles will be able to retain him given their cap. He makes a lot of sense in Jersey. I mean, Korpisalo would too as well, to pair with Vanacek until Akira Schmid is ready. Probably a 2-year deal, maybe a 1-year. I don't know. I think Varlamov makes a lot of sense there.
By the way, a little nugget and hits close to home with you in St. Louis. I think the Islanders, since moving on from Josh Bailey, have doubled back in their effort to try and keep Scott Mayfield before he ends up hitting the market on Saturday at noon. Put the Islanders in the only God and Lou no category because word never seems to leak out. Even agents that sting like canaries don't have a lot to say when they're dealing with Lou. So we've covered 8 teams, Mike. That leaves at least 6 more that need a goalie. Who's left and where do they go?
All right, so let's just go rapid fire on this. The Winnipeg Jets, okay, whether they trade Hellebuck or not, they're going to need a goaltender. So is David Rittich the guy that they believe could fill in if Hellebuck's not going to be there? I don't think so. So give me Cam Talbot there. These are all just good educated guesses. I think Laurent Brossoit really fits with the Rangers and the style that Benoit Allaire, the goaltending coach, likes there. Yaroslav Halak, I don't think is headed back to New York Rangers. You can give me Martin Jones down there. Potentially with the Islanders if Varlamov moves on. I think Jones could also fit with the Tampa Bay Lightning, who I have Rittich slotted into later on. Halak, he just wants a couple more wins to get to 300, I believe was the number.
He's 5 away.
In Chicago. He's 5 away. Maybe he goes to Chicago, get the number. I'm not sure a top team would go for him. But keep an eye on Stolarz here. I'm not sure where he I got a little bit of news here that I don't think Stolarz is going to go to Seattle any longer. I had him listed there. I think there's a good chance that Joey Dacord may go back there. So keep an eye on Stolarz. He's had some pretty good runs in San Diego, with the Ducks. And I think that he could fit with someone. I'm just not sure right now at this point, given that I think that Seattle's probably going to stick with Dacord.
Makes sense to stick with Dacord. I mean, I get it.
Dude, give him a 3-year one-way and let it ride. Like, he's going to be a good goaltender.
Give him a Logan Thompson type contract.
100%. Yeah, take it.
You think Thompson will be on the move between now and then as a trade target potentially?
It's a good question. I thought he was their guy. Signing Aiden Hill for almost $5 million, if that's what the deal turns out to be, and winning a Stanley Cup, I think maybe that has shifted, and I didn't expect that. So that contract's so good, though, Frank. Like, that's a tough contract to trade. But which team's going to go for it?
I wouldn't move him. I mean, having him locked up for that term and those dollars, like that's the exact reason you did it, is so that you can reap and enjoy the benefits of that, especially because he's also proven himself to be pretty good. Mike, so much happening on the goaltending front. Great to dive into it with you. There's a bunch of guys in here that didn't even crack my top 50 free agents, perhaps need to add a few more to the board before it comes out later today at dailyfaceoff.com. You can check all of Mike's analysis on the goaltending market. It's been top-notch at dailyfaceoff.com. Thanks for this week's edition of The Blue Paint. All right, time for our daily face-off inbox question of the day. Hashtag AskDFO. If you are in the chat, fire one in there, and we'd be happy to get to it. As those questions are coming in, my question for you, Mike, is there someone on the goalie market in terms of someone going to be signed that the number may surprise you in terms of the earnings?
I think that a lot of goalies are going to be above $4 million in surprise. The one that I
Really?
keep it, yeah, I think because the going rate, man, when you look at it, is all high. I think Freddie Anderson's going to get $6 million. I think
Six
it's,
million bucks. Dude,
I
I
think
will
he's
eat
going
my hat live on this show if he gets $6 million.
to. What's your floor? 5.5 though? He's going to get above 5.
No,
What do
I
you
think
think?
I think someone's gonna try and entice him with like 3 years times $4 million or 4.5.
You
He's
think
just
he
too
gets
injured, I think, to
4?
go.
I don't. Everybody's injured. That's when they finally look across the board. Like Jari could get that too. Jari could be 5.5 for sure.
That's
We'll see.
maybe I'm undervaluing it, and maybe I need to. I think what they were trying to give Jari was somewhere in the 4.75 range. So I don't
Wow.
think they wanted to keep him south of 5 million. I think
They
is
wanted him
pretty
on a
accurate.
Huso deal. That's what they wanted.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then are you surprised that a bigger market hasn't developed for Hellebuck, knowing what you need to pay him?
No, I'm not, because I don't know who wants to commit $9 million to a goaltender in today's world. I just don't. I think 2 years from now it might be different with the cap going up, but no one knows what it's going to look like, and they still have to get through the first couple of years of it.
Interesting. Let's move on to our Betano Daily Bet segment. As always, Daily Faceoff Live brought to you by Betano.ca. The game starts now at Betano.ca. And Mike, it's just interesting to kind of look at the odds boards. I know we're talking about futures and next year's Stanley Cup winner and the conference winners, but if you have a hunch that a team might be a big player today or tomorrow, maybe time to get in a futures bet on a team whose odds are a bit lower that you could then capitalize and cash in on. And so I kind of wanted to focus on the Atlantic Division odds. To me, that's really interesting heading into next season. And when you look at where the odds board stands right now on Betano.ca, you've got the Toronto Maple Leafs at plus 250, the Boston Bruins coming off of their historic regular season at plus 400. Understand why they're lower because of the changes that they need to make. But what about the Florida Panthers or Tampa Bay Lightning at plus 400? Do either one of those teams at 4-1 excite you as the potential to win the Atlantic in the regular season?
Tampa's going to be a little bit tough sledding. What do you? But I think they could pull that off. I wouldn't bet against them. What about you?
I would say I would go with Florida because I think, look, they're going to get their injured guys Ekblad and Montour back. And I think
do they get the defenseman they need? Do they get the?
I think they're going to get one top 4
Okay.
defenseman. And I'm also curious, do they take a run, even though he had offseason surgery, at re-signing Radko Gudas?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at a cheaper number if you can afford it.
Would he take a cheaper number?
I don't know. I think Radko Gudas is somewhere in the 3x3 range. I think he really pumped up his value in the postseason.
Yeah, I think he could be 3.3, 3.4. Yeah, but I think they're going to get somebody on D.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's definitely their focus. And Anthony Duclair's name continues to be on the market as well. That brings us to garbage time, Mike. You were drafted by the Nashville Predators. You can see the sweater hanging behind you. And you wanted to touch on one of the guys that went late in round 7.
Not just late, last. So Tyler Peddle goes last overall. That's number 224. And by the way, it's not that the Mr. Irrelevant thing's from a different sport, right? I didn't even know what that was until I saw it today. But still being drafted is a huge deal. Okay. And he had 12 family members there from Nova Scotia. And he heard Quebec Major Jr. He couldn't even hear his name because people were going crazy, right? He stayed in the building to the last moment. I don't know why he would leave. But he got his chance, and his friends were there. He was the number 2 pick in the Quebec League draft 2 years ago. So this was a pretty big fall, and I think he could have gone anywhere in the draft, middle rounds to later. He had 24 goals in the Quebec League this year. But imagine just hanging by a thread and finally getting called. And so it just reminded me of my draft when I was in Toronto. I didn't know if I was going to be drafted or not. It was 2002. And my agent at the time said, yeah, you probably should be there. We think you might go 4th, 5th, 6th round. Well, it started to go late, Frank. It started to get to the 6th round, and I was
you get nervous in a hurry.
This may not be a good deal, dude. And it got to 172, and there it is, the mustard yellow over my shoulder here. I went to the Nashville Predators. Frank, they were the only team that I talked to before the draft, the only one. And I kind of had a hunch at that number because McElhaney was in the mix at that point, another couple goalies. I thought maybe it'll happen, and it did. And forever changed my life because I got to work with Mitch Korn and Barry Trotz was there, and just Claude Noel. And you go down the list of people, Todd Richards, that were involved in that organization, David Poyle. Even though I never signed with the Predators, pretty happy that I got signed, that I ended up being drafted by them because it just changed the whole course of my life. And I have this sweet mustard Sabercat jersey, Frank.
Yeah, the jersey is definitely a keeper. It was funny because as the draft is going on, I'm sitting there working, and you hear different cheers in various parts of the arena. And especially as it's late, like Jason Greger, my co-host on the Rundown, looked at me and he goes, who would come here for the draft if you're a late round pick? And I was like, I don't know about you. First off, this is a destination. There's tons of fun to be had in Nashville. Go on a family vacation. And 2, if you're in the building, to hear your name called, it's so much better than seeing it pop up on the screen on NHL.com, which is how a lot of guys find out later in rounds.
There's nothing like
Enjoy it. It's got to be an amazing family moment that you'd never get back. Why wouldn't you at least see it through, especially if you've been there? By the way, the draft is riddled with kids that do end up going and don't get picked and have to walk out of the building dejected. And some of them get drafted the next year. Some of them go on to have NHL careers. The draft isn't the end-all, be-all, but it's still, why wouldn't you want to be there for the moment?
Yeah, and I got pictures of my parents from the draft, man. Like, I remember walking past Wayne Gretzky on the floor and just going, right, like, this is real, man. Like, it is. If you have a chance to go. I don't know if you bring 4 dozen people, but go.
All right, well, let's, before we wrap, we just wanted to get to a couple viewer questions from our YouTube stream. Thanks for hanging in with us. Doomed and Confused asked, wondering what RFAs are not being tendered and will become UFAs. Max Comtois is one guy that stands out for me from the Anaheim Ducks. All the physical tools to be an impact guy, not receiving a qualifying offer from the Ducks. He's going to be somewhere in my top 50. What do you think?
What about Sam Steele, who was also an Anaheim Duck previously, Minnesota Wild?
He caught on.
Yeah, that was another one that caught me a little bit off guard. It's Comtois is one that I think has probably got some juice behind him still, but you're just wrong place, wrong time with Anaheim.
Yeah, we don't have a full view, Doomed and Confused, by the way, of the non-QO guys yet. That deadline is also later today. Peter asks, are the Islanders looking at Alex DeBrincat? Again, the only God and Lou no category. I'm just going to say no from a sheer fact of can't afford him.
They'd have to do an awful lot to bring him in. I'd be very surprised at that.
And Peter Sanford asks, what do you think the Blues do to their blue line? All I can tell you is this, Peter. I don't know if there's one person on the planet that probably is more in Doug Armstrong's crawl than Torrey Krug. I think he screwed up his entire week. Can't go out and trade for players at 25 and 29 overall using those picks unless you have the cap space to actually acquire them. And not having it by virtue of Krug not waiving the no trade, that one's got to hurt.
It feels kind of like the Patrick Hornquist situation at Pittsburgh a few years ago, right? Where he finally saw the writing on the wall and went, okay, this team doesn't want me at all. Maybe I should just move on. Doesn't it kind of feel like that?
That's the tough part about the no trades. I love that players flex the muscle to use them, and that's their earned right that they bargained for. The problem is once you flex the muscle, you then have to live with the idea that that team doesn't want you anymore. Kind of makes it hard to step back into that building again, which is why a lot of teams don't really mind giving them out because they think there's always a way around them. And by the way, Just to put in parentheses, as I was looking for waivers this week and the 12 noon window hitting every day, I kept going, is there any chance that Doug Armstrong is going to put Torrey Krug on waivers and have him force the move through with someone else taking him via trade? That is the workaround. And if there was one GM in the NHL to do it, definitely wouldn't put it past Doug Armstrong to do so.
I could see that too, Frank. That's the ugly side of the business, but I love it. Krug took him. He's got young kids. He's in one place where he wanted to be. I get it 100%.
Well, that's hard. Then no one else can really take you seriously after giving out that clause ever again if you're the GM. So that puts him in a bind as well. You know what? So much jam-packed show today, 36 minutes of pure hockey talk. Thanks to our technical producer, Aaron Bordato, for really moving things around and maneuvering at the last second, especially with news of Matt Duchene's buyout coming so late. Mike, great job. You as well, stick handling through the mess. We'll be back 11 a.m. Eastern, on Saturday. 2-hour free agent special on the Daily Faceoff YouTube stream. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you on Saturday for the big day as free agency opens. Talk to you then.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.